another edition of the KSO Sunday Show, brought to you by People's State Bank and Legacy Insurance. Derek Young and I are inside of Bill Snyder Family Stadium after another K-State blowout, Derek. The Wildcats win 52-0 today over Bowling Green. The game was never in doubt. Very similar to last week. What are your thoughts on K-State's big win today?
They did everything that we could ask of them. I think the main point I took from last week was, can they replicate that performance again? Even if the opponent might be worse than Nichols, can they do the same thing against Bowling Green? They did exactly that. They did it from running the ball. Malik Knowles had a big game as a receiver. And I think the defense probably had a better game today than they did against Nichols.
I feel the same way. Let's go drive by drive and talk about it like we did last week on the KSO Sunday Show. First drive, Derek, Phillip Brooks starts K-State off with a 44-yard kickoff return. The Wildcats move the ball all the way down the field, but they do get stopped deep in Bowling Green territory and have to settle for a 24-yard Blake Lynch field goal. So we'll start with special teams. You get a nice kick return from Phillip Brooks early in the game, a field goal there after Blake Lynch missed his first one. No touchdown, but still points on the first drive.
Yeah, that was probably the best special teams aspect of this game. They hit their struggles, throughout the game and later on. But I think the biggest takeaway I took from that possession, as funny as it sounds, was the field goal, because I think Blake Lynch needed a make going into the Mississippi State game a week from today.
I don't disagree at all. Of course, you'd like to get a touchdown, but three's good. And even Chris Klieman in postgame, we'll hear more from him later in segment 2, but talked about the value, even if you don't get points or a touchdown, of possessing the ball as long as they did. So still a positive opening drive for K-State. Bowling Green cannot do anything on their drive. That's happened the whole game. You're not going to hear one scoring drive from them. That's what happens when you get shut out. K-State does score its first touchdown on the day on a 50-yard Jordan Brown touchdown run, the longest play of the season thus far. We've seen a lot of running backs, Derek, but that was the most explosive individual play we've seen yet from a K-State running back.
And not only did he just show explosion on that run, I think we chatted as soon as it happened that it looked like at least at that point we're like, well, he might have a little bit more of the breakaway speed that maybe we hadn't seen in the season opener against Nichols. So it was nice to see someone that had able to pull away from a defense, because I'm still not sure that James Gilbert or Harry Trotter maybe has that next gear to pull away from a defense, but Jordan Brown showed glimpses that maybe he can be that home run hitter.
Well said. That drive was 7 plays for 84 yards, took 3:56 off the clock. K-State was up 10-0 over Bowling Green with just under 6 minutes left in the first quarter of play. Like last week, Derek, all the touchdowns came by different guys early on. Same thing happened today. The second one was another running back. This time, James Gilbert looked very similar to his touchdown last week. 17-yard run to cap off an 8-play, 78-yard drive that took just under 4 minutes. And before the first quarter's over, 40 seconds left, the Wildcats are already up 17-0.
Yeah, they controlled the first quarter. They controlled the first half, much like they did against Nichols. And I think even though we are 2 games in, we're starting to see what James Gilbert is and what he's going to provide for this offense. He's going to be a guy that runs through more tackles than probably the rest of the running backs. He's going to continuously and consistently get more yards than what the play is blocked for, and that's a really good sign of a good running back, probably the most complete back on the team, and why he's getting the starting nod when you look at depth charts week in and week out.
Let me give you some running back stats real quick as Derek tells about how they played. James Gilbert, 8 carries for 103 yards. Jordan Brown, just 4 carries for 64, including that 50-yard touchdown. Obviously, 2 straight 100-yard games to back up for James Gilbert, which is great to see. Let's talk about Jacardier Wright for a second, Derek. I'm going to go ahead and sell our merchandise here. If they read, your piece, what would we call that? The final walkthrough, I believe. Or if they listened to Power Cat Game this morning, where I stole the info from D. Young, you thought Jacardier was going to play today, and he led K-State with carries, 14 for 59. He didn't score, but a nice game for the true freshman.
Yeah, something I had heard in the few days leading up to today's game against Bowling Green, well, actually it would be yesterday's game because we're airing this on Sunday, was that Jacardier Wright was no longer on the scout team. He got scout team offensive player of the week last week in preparation against Nichols, but this week Jacardier Wright not with the scout team. He's with not just the 2s or the 3s. He actually got, I think we counted 3 or 4 snaps with the regular, so it wasn't like he got, hey, a little bit of garbage time here, a little bit of garbage time there. He got a lot of snaps towards the end of the game, but he was out there with the first-team offensive line and the first-team receiver, so he's someone that they feel that they can start to trust, start to rely on, and he kind of leapfrogged Joe Irvin in doing so.
Was just going to say the same thing. Joe Irvin played today, too. He scored later. We'll talk about that, but he had 8 carries for 28 yards and did score a touchdown, so even the guy he hopped over still got on the field. So like you said, I think you put on Twitter, you've told me 11 true freshmen played today. That's a quote we'll get to later in segment 2 from Chris Klieman. So it's 17-0 at the end of the first quarter. The Wildcats go up 24-0. The third different back scores on the third different touchdown. Harry Trotter walks in an easy one on, I believe, a first and goal from the 1. That was just a 24-yard drive after a turnover. 3:08 left in the first quarter, 24-0. Game's pretty much over at this point, Derek. Were you surprised that it looked as easy again through, a quarter and a half or, a quarter and 1 drive as it did last week?
In general, I thought that they would perform well against Bowling Green. This was a Bowling Green team I wasn't expecting a whole lot from, and I was like, got a sense that Kansas State was a pretty respectable team from what we saw last week. I think the shock that I took is that I expected this team to kind of start out of the gates kind of slow this week. It's that sandwich game, almost a trap game, even though it's not a strong opponent, because you're playing 11 a.m. kickoff, coming off a high-energy evening kickoff and Chris Klieman's first game, and maybe looking ahead to Mississippi State the following week. So it's just kind of an inconvenient time slot and sandwiched in probably two more meaningful games, at least on paper. So I think what I took most from this win in general was the maturity that they showed to start fast and play faster.
And that's what Chris Klieman wanted them to do. We can't repeat some of it because it'd be breaking trust anyway. But Derek Young heard some exciting conversations in pregame by the coaches, making sure their players did not take this lightly. So it was 24-0 after the 1-yard Harry Trotter touchdown run. K-State extended it to 31-0 on James Gilbert's second run of the day, second touchdown run of the day, a 5-yard run, 6-play, 74-yard drive, 3 minutes. So look at these last 4 drives: 7 plays, 84, 356; 8 plays, 78 yards, 358. Short field, 6:24, 308. Next play, 6:74, 3 minutes. I'll give you a spoiler. The next touchdown was a 34-yard pass to Malik Knowles. That was a 6-play, 56-yard, 318. So nothing but 6 or 7 play drives, all 3 minutes. And for an offense that doesn't go particularly fast, they got a lot of plays off for the first half, DY.
Yeah, and though they don't go particularly fast, and they do obviously like to control the ball, like to run the clock, I think they actually probably operate a little bit quicker than the Kansas State offenses that we saw the past couple of years under head coach Bill Snyder, or before head coach Bill Snyder. So they're methodical, but they are efficient in terms of getting off snaps, and it really shows the success rate and a mistake-free they play, because you run that many plays, there's more chances for errors to happen, and they just aren't happening yet, and that's a really good sign of a well-disciplined team, a team that's not going to make mistakes and beat themselves, because that's easier to do when you run more plays.
Malik Knowles scored the last touchdown of the first half on that 34-yard pass from Skylar Thompson, and the first touchdown of the second half on a 20-yard pass from Skylar Thompson. So, Derek, let's talk about Malik Knowles for a little bit. 5 catches, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns, and not just the touchdowns. He had a couple other catches that were really, really impressive. This guy obviously had a couple drops last week, wasn't happy about it. He really, really established himself today for K-State.
Yeah, we could tell his talent kind of started to ooze, last year in the few glimpses that we saw him, and then again in week 1. Honestly, despite the some of the drops that he showcased against Nichols, he still had glimpses where he looked like the high-profile talent that we kind of expected to see. And today, it started to come together. It was probably his best game as a Wildcat, at least most complete game. And I think that if he continues to progress at this rate, it's hard to see what that ceiling might be, because I think at the end of the day, his potential could leave him as one of the better K-State receivers in the history of the program, really. I know that's a leap, obviously, only his second, game this season, and he's still a redshirt freshman, but that talent is on pure display, and we saw that today.
I don't disagree at all. Like you said, a lot still to prove, a young guy, but he has so many things you look for in a modern wide receiver that you really, really want. K-State really called off the Dogs in this one. They put in their number 2s late in the second quarter.
Early.
They brought the starters back in for a drive to start the third quarter, which makes sense to me. Then they go back to the backups the rest of the way. The last touchdown was from Joe Irvin, as we mentioned earlier, a 6-yard run. That was a 14-play, 68-yard drive directed by Nick Ost, who actually came in after John Holcomb, but probably played a little bit better today. I'm going to read through some stats for you, DY, and just give you some thoughts on there, just if anything jumps out to you. 52-0, of course. First downs, K-State 25-5. That's what you're hoping for, I guess.
Pretty good.
Rushing yards, K-State 333-61. Now, I am disappointed the Wildcats didn't break the school rushing record back-to-back weeks. I thought it was going to happen. They were above 260 with like 7 minutes left in the first half. They couldn't do it, just 333. Passing yards, 188-79. That's a good point to stop and talk about Skylar Thompson. 10 of 13 today, 151, 2 touchdowns. Another incredibly efficient day from Skylar Thompson.
Yeah, that's probably the way to describe it, and probably I think that's the Skylar we're going to see a lot this year. Perhaps he had probably a more poorly thrown balls today than he had last week, but efficiency was still the name of the game. And if he continues to do that, they're always going to be in the game. It's hard to see the way that they can control the ball and the way they can take care of the ball and really not make any penalties once again today. It's hard to see them beating themselves enough to where, you're giving up leads, where you're squandering bigger leads, or you're taking yourself out of the game. This is an offense that should lead them in contention for most of the season. You wonder what will happen against Oklahoma. That's, several weeks away from today. But Mississippi State should have a lot to prepare for and a lot to take care of.
Man, cannot wait to get to Starkville next week. I'm going to give you a few more stats, and we'll wrap up segment 1 before we come back and talk with Chris Klieman and Kansas State's players following their 52-0 win over Bowling Green. The Wildcats outgained the Falcons 521-140. Possession time today, 42 minutes and 52 seconds for K-State, 17:08 for
That's
Bowling
the big
Green.
one.
I mean, it's
42 to
but the
17.
next one, third down conversions, Bowling Green 0 of 11. Not one third down conversion, not one fourth down conversion. They were 0 of 2. So they were 0 of 13 on third and fourth down conversions. K-State, on the other hand, on third and fourth down conversions, only 11 of 18, well over 50%, and 6 for 6 in the red zone.
And really, that's kind of a repeat from last week.
Right.
I want to look after the game or after we do this and see what they rank nationally. But I bet Kansas State might leave week 2 as the best third down defense in the country and perhaps the best third down offense in the country.
It's hard to imagine somebody is statistically better at those two categories right now, but we'll find out for sure. That does wrap up segment 1 for us. We'll be back for segment 2 as we talk to Chris Klieman of the Wildcats following another win that puts K-State at 2-0 on the season.
It's just a statement game, a lot of people thought we was going to be, bottom of the Big 12, but, we still out to prove that, we in it for it all, so not done yet.
Matt Hall back with you for segment 2 of the KSO Sunday Show. In this one, we'll walk you through the locker room as Chris Klieman spoke in postgame and his players did after a 52-0 win over Bowling Green. Let's start with Chris Klieman, who is happy with what K-State accomplished, but feels like there's still some detail work to be done.
Just continuing to work on scenarios, whether it's red zone. We've been productive in the red zone. Haven't had a lot of opportunities on defense, so we've emphasized that a little bit more, and we'll have to continue this week to emphasize some red zone defense. Be nice if we didn't have to defend the red zone, but I think that's reality is going to strike here. But just overall, we just have to continue to improve. Whether it's, we were really good on third down again, but we've got to continue to work on third down defense. We've got to continue to work, some play action, some things on first down. I think overall our body of work has been good, but this is just 2 games, and we took care of business. But now we really got to play well.
We'll hear more from Chris Klieman later on in the segment, but now I'm going to move to Reggie Walker, K-State senior defensive end, preseason All-Big 12 first-team selection. Of course, Reggie Walker is happy that K-State posted a shutout today in game number 2.
It's just, as a defensive player, that's what you want. You want to keep that 0 on the board, and for us to do that, it's amazing.
Let's flip to the offensive side, where the running game was the story again, but Malik Knowles had a big game. 5 catches, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns. Skylar Thompson never lost faith in his freshman receiver after a couple drops last week.
I was just really proud of how he responded to last week, because I knew there was a lot of talk going about the couple drops he had and this and that, and I texted him Sunday and was just like, dude, I love you. I'm gonna keep believing you. I'm gonna keep throwing you the ball. You better believe that and be ready to go. And he made me look great in a lot of different situations tonight. Today, on some throws that I wasn't necessarily perfect with. And made a great catch on multiple occasions. So it's just sky's the limit for Malik. I've said that before. I'll say it again. He's a redshirt freshman. He has a lot in store for him. You just got to keep going and not take anything for granted, and just keep working. I'm doing my best to hold him to that, and just keep getting better every day.
So obviously the offense was good, putting 52 points on the board today. Defense pitches a shutout. Special teams had some issues. Phillip Brooks in particular muffed 2 punts, but Chris Klieman still shared a lot of faith in his return man after the contest.
Yeah, he struggled a little bit today, but I've got a lot of confidence in Phillip. He had the big kick return to start the game, which was a huge play, and Phillip's a great young man, confident kid, and we'll get him back on track. But Phillip will continue to return punts for us. He's an exceptional player. We'll get him back on track.
Finally, here in segment 2, we're going to talk with senior defensive tackle Trey Deshawn, who admitted he couldn't help but think about how he felt after last year's Mississippi State game late in today's contest.
I was even thinking about that at the end of this game, and the fourth quarter when the ones were done. I was thinking about that immediately, and down in the locker room, it was like, we started out 2-0, not very good last year, not very good wins, but going and then losing that Mississippi State game going into Big 12 play, that was huge. We're 2-1. We just took not a good loss. You know what I mean? And so I felt it. I felt it when I was thinking about that. It's funny you mentioned that.
That's going to wrap up segment 2 from inside the Wildcats locker room following a 52-0 win over Bowling Green here inside of Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I'll be back with Derek Young for segment 3 to look one more time at the game, talk recruiting, and look ahead to Mississippi State here on the KSO Sunday Show.
you win 2 games pretty handily, you better not fall in love with yourself. You better keep striving to be better. And in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams, we have to just go back to work and continue to stack each day. We talk about it all the time. Stack great day upon great day, Monday through Friday, to give yourself a chance to be successful on Saturday.
Derek and I are back for the third and final segment of the KSO Sunday Show, which is brought to you by People's State Bank and Legacy Insurance. Derek, we talked about it in segment 1. 11 true freshmen played today. Just a fascinating number to see when we hear, maybe 6. They get 11 out there. What were your thoughts on that, and what does that do for a program when you play that many true freshmen?
Have 11 played the last 5 years combined?
I doubt it. Yeah.
It does a lot. Prospects are taking notice. High school coaches are taking notice. The players playing are taking notice. They're being more engaged when you have a reason to practice with a purpose, and they do. It's certainly going to make your program better. But I'm not surprised when we're tweeting out some of these stats from this true freshman playing and that true freshman playing, and you have prospects that K-State really likes, even committed elsewhere, are liking those tweets. So they're definitely taking notice. So it's a step forward in the right direction, and it's certainly going to provide maybe a boost on the recruiting trail even.
Right.
So, no, I think it's a good thing. And 11 played today. What does that mean going forward on the field? Not all 11 are going to lose their red shirts, and I think some only played a little bit today because they know they're not going to play over 4 games.
Exactly, but when you've got the chance to do it in a game like this, it's great for team morale, it's great for engagement, it can be great for recruiting, like you said. Let's look at 2 of them, the running backs again. We talked in segment 1, we talked about how it happened, but Jacardier Wright, most carries on the team with 14, and then Joe Irvin has 8. That's 22 carries for the true freshman running backs. Joshua Youngblood, I think you told me, was 3rd in snaps, 3rd or 4th last week in snaps at receiver. So there's a few that aren't just getting on the field, they're playing significant number of snaps for this team.
Yeah, playing a significant number of snaps, and it can kind of vary week to week. Like Joshua Youngblood was tied for 3rd and receiver snaps a week ago. Today he's kind of at 5th. So it's also game plan dependent, opponent dependent. So it'll be interesting. Each week will probably provide us a surprise. I wonder what we see in Starkville, which ones will actually travel with the team.
Right.
So that'll be an interesting thing to monitor. But, yeah, 22 carries from true freshman running backs, and even Coach Klieman admitted, some of those were probably they just wanted to throw them in the fire to see how they respond, and that's maybe why they went that direction today instead of Tyler Burns.
We, of course, have all sorts of great things to talk about. Maybe the one negative from today outside of perhaps some special teams would be injuries. Wyatt Hubert left in the first half, did not return to the game. Chris Klieman didn't have a comment on him after the game. Walter Neal left in the first half. I saw him on the bench in the second half. Chris Klieman said he could have played. Devin Anktel went down. I can't remember if it was the first or second half, but I was not expecting to come back. He did come back to hold an extra point. He's got an award to win, so that's important that he did that. I'm curious, do you have anything to add to those injuries? And if you don't, still, how important can those be heading into Mississippi State next Saturday?
Well, it's crucial. It can be argued that Devin Anktel is one of the best punters in college football, and not a whole lot of people know about him, or they might think that's like jumping the gun, but he's really that good.
Yep.
He just hasn't punted a lot. We haven't seen him, I think, punted twice today. Yeah, punted twice.
Maybe 3. He may have got a 3rd off, but still, yeah.
Yeah. And I think today was a case where he might have just had a cramp, so not totally concerned about that. Coach Klieman did say Walter Neal could return, and he looked fine on the bench after his injury, even though he looked really ginger coming off the field, so not totally concerned about him. Wyatt Hubert, it does sound like he's in the concussion protocol. I think that's what Wyatt Thompson on K-State Sports Network had to say, and that's what I've heard myself too, speaking to a source close to Hubert. And they were a little bit more optimistic than some other folks have shared so far, and that they think it's kind of a mild concussion and that he'll have a chance to play next week. But it might be one of those where it is a game time decision, and see how much progress he's able to make throughout the week. But probably the bigger items of discussion perhaps might be, we thought we might see Jonathan Durham and Cody Fletcher this week, and we did not.
Right, exactly. So a number of guys who are key contributors, at least a little bit nicked up early in the season, but overall not in terrible shape injury-wise by any stretch.
Right. Unfortunately, it's all on the defensive side
Correct.
of the ball
That's
right
a good
now.
point. We look at it that way, it is more of a problem. I want to talk recruiting for just a second before we go back to looking at Mississippi State for next week. If you don't subscribe to K-StateOnline, we would love you to. Derek shares more recruiting information for football, Grant Flanders for basketball than you're going to find anywhere. Just a quick idea of who was here today and some things you observed from the recruits on the field here at Bill Snyder Family Stadium.
Yeah, today they had an official visitor for football in town. We certainly broke that news earlier in the week. Defensive end Johnny Walker from the Tampa area knows Joshua Youngblood, has a pretty good friendship with him. He was in town. He spent a lot of time that we saw. I think you saw him at Tall Grass Tap House, actually.
Correct.
With Mike McCoy and Taylor Bratton today. He spent a lot of time with Mike McCoy, who's obviously being, I guess, groomed to be the next Taylor Bratt, so to speak. Taylor Bratt's job security might be in trouble.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Mike McCoy spent a lot of time with him. So Johnny Walker was probably the most profile recruit and official visitor in the 2020 class at defensive end. He's listed as a linebacker in the Rivals database, but certainly a defensive end. And they also had some really strong 2021 prospects in town, and the biggest of them was probably Bo Stevens, the offensive lineman from Blue Springs, and they're really hoping to land him. He's probably a ways from making a decision,
right.
Just a 2021 recruit, and the competition for him is probably Iowa at this point, and I think those K-State and Iowa are going to butt head-to-head quite a bit for offensive linemen going forward. And on the basketball side, Grant Flanders has certainly provided a lot of information in that realm, and they had 2 official visitors today as well, and Jethro Muscadine, is that how you say it?
I say Muscadine, you say Muscadine, it's all the same.
And Selton Miguel, 2 4-star prospects. So Bruce Weber is recruiting. Actually, I would consider this year actually on in the uptick, and the official visitor list the last 2 weeks would certainly prove that to be true.
Derek, this Mississippi State game, we're going to have more to talk about probably this week than any in the 2.5 year history of K-StateOnline, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. But that was the game last year, at least for me, and I think for you too, that you realized there were some real problems. What do you remember about that post game, and then how can you imagine this same program being competitive with Mississippi State Saturday in Starkville?
I just remember thinking that they didn't even come close to competing at the same level. You know, and this is going to sound harsh, so don't be offended, folks, but Kansas State, what they did to Nichols last week is what Mississippi State did to Kansas State last year. So kind of offensive, but true. And you hope that it doesn't look like that next week. I don't expect it to. This program seems a little bit more functional from an execution standpoint, and probably more confidence, and guys really coming into their own and understanding their roles. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And they got dominated probably on the line of scrimmage more than anything against Mississippi State last year, especially their defensive front did not perform well against the Bulldogs in Manhattan a year ago. So more will be expected and more will be needed from the defensive front this year, specifically Trey Deshawn and Jordan Mitty. It was probably a game for them to forget last year. They'll definitely want to avenge themselves this year.
That about wraps us up here for the KSO Sunday show. Something a little bit different this week. I'm going to let Skylar Thompson finish the show as he tells you why he's looking forward to traveling to Starkville on Saturday. Can you recall or remember your emotions last year after Mississippi State and what that game felt like?
Yeah, it was not a good feeling. And a lot of question marks walking off the field for sure. But I'm excited for a new year, a new opportunity. I think that's the best way to put it. Is last year was last year, and they were a good football team. They're going to be a good football team, and I know that. So yeah, that's gonna, I think, help me mentally prepare for how it's going to be, how physical the game's going to be, how fast they're going to be, and that will help slow the game down a little bit for me. But I'm excited to go play. I'm excited to get into the meat of our season, as some people would say, and got a great, non-con game on the road in the SEC. Man, what an opportunity. I'm gonna be fired up. I'm gonna be excited to go play, and this team is too. So we just gotta have a great week of practice and just go be ourselves. I think that's the main thing, is just play for one another, love one another, be great teammates, hold each other accountable, and we'll be successful.